second panel of the day. So our founder for Muslim Tech Fest, Arfah, she's going to be talking about how Muslims can impact big tech. And so she has a lot of experience, and she's really passionate in advocating for diversity in this space. And so she's worked with diverse communities and is leading today's discussion. And she's actually gonna join a couple of other panelists with us as well. So Alaa, Gulrez, and Lama as well. So they'll be joining, and they're gonna bring their expertise on. You guys ready? Yep. Yeah, ready? Ready to go? Okay, let's go. All right, let's go, Arfah, let's go. Everyone, round of applause as she's walking in. Come on, let's go. Yes, amazing. So give us a little bit more information on that. Yeah, yep.
Isn't Javera doing an amazing job? Give her a round of applause. Cool. So before I begin, one of the things I often actually go about is we got to build our own tables, which, yes, is a part of the story. But I also think it's really important. There are big companies out there that are hugely influential in society. So it's really important that we have Muslims high up in those positions that also are influencing and making impact in big tech. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Alaa Aissi, Manager of Trust and Safety at YouTube and Head of Muslims at Google. Give her a round of applause. We've got Gulrez Khan, Data Science Lead at PayPal and Head of Muslims ERG Group. And last but not least, we've got Lama Ahmad, Technical Program Manager, Trustworthy AI at OpenAI. Welcome. So excited to have you all. Okay, so before we begin, I'm going to start off with a very obvious question. Can you share a bit about your journey into tech and what motivated you to enter the industry, and what has your experience been like so far?
Should I get started on this? Okay. My journey to tech actually started as a 7th grader, which I'm going to take you guys back. I'm not that old, so it should be really quick. I partook in 3 science fairs that changed my life as a young preteen. I did one experiment on the social interactions of a human in virtual worlds. At the time, I was too young to be on MySpace, so I did it on SimCity, for those that remember.
Yep.
I did one on climate, the impact of technology on the climate. So I studied usage and workloads, running experiments on Excel sheets, Google searches, and whatnot. And then my final project was about privacy. And after deleting content, where does it go, and can it ever be recovered? I had received awards for all of them. And as someone that wasn't interested in the sciences, I was trying to prove a point, because I was always more interested in English and psychology and political science. To prove that point, my parents kind of laid off. I went ahead and got a degree in political science and legal studies. And I found myself face-to-face with my parents, asking them to take myself a little bit less seriously, and to go have some fun after all of the lobbying and elections and strategy work that I had done. I was sitting on this email from Google, where a recruiter had emailed me, and I thought it was spam, so I didn't respond. And the Google recruiter had reached out asking me to apply for an operations role at the time. I had an offer from the DNC at the time, and so I was really excited, because that's what I studied, that's what I wanted to be in, and politics was my passion. But I took the role, or I took the interview, and at the end of the interview, I had lunch with the only interviewer that was a woman. And I was like, how the heck are you doing this? I spoke to 4 or 5 men that day. I didn't really see myself at the company, and I was ready to walk out and take the offer that I had. But she was just like, if you don't pave the way, then who will? Because the next woman's going to walk in and say the same thing, and the next woman is going to walk in and say the same thing. And she said, additional to you being a woman, you're also a variety of things. And so she said, like, tech isn't to bring your whole self. but it's to bring the best parts of yourself. And that's why you're here today, and that's why you're being interviewed. So my journey to tech was unconventional. I don't have a degree in computer science. I don't have a degree in math. I don't have a degree in physics or chemistry. I do have a degree in liberal arts. And so I started off operations for cloud. We were doing the biggest hiring push of any tech company at the time. So we were working like 60, 70, 80, 90 hours per week, which is crazy and uncalled for at the time. But we were meeting higher hiring metrics than anyone else in the industry at the time. And then I switched over to YouTube about 2 years ago in the trust and safety space, working on content moderation. I will not be dealing with all of the YouTube accounts going down in the room, but I can definitely answer questions. And that's a little bit about my tech adventure.
Gulrez?
MashaAllah, very inspiring journey. So what motivated me to get into tech is money. So honestly, like I come from India, from a very humble background, and we had lots of loans as I was growing up. I wanted to become an author. Like I was writing poems when I was growing up, and that was my mindset. But then my brother said, like, Barkhurdar, it's in Urdu, you got loans to pay. And then I just followed his path. Like he took maths, so I took maths. He took computers, I took computers. I was a very average student. And after my engineering, I went to India in the city called Pune, and I said, this time I'll work hard. I'll do MBA, and I'll have good grades. But then, like one fine day, my brother called me, and he said, there is a walk-in interview happening for Tata Consultancy, if you know of that company. You go there. I said, they'll not take me. I don't know anything. He said, just go there and attend. So I went there, and I was like in the interviews, they asked, okay, describe an ideal job for you. So there a poet in me woke up. He said, where the mind is without fear, where the head is held high into that freedom of heaven, and something worked. So now it's almost 20 years. I've been like reciting poems here and there. And so basically, like if you think of tech, it's not just about technical stuff. Like there are these soft skills which are much needed. I work as a data science leader. And when I look into the data science community today, like we talk about models and whatnot, but when it comes to telling stories, we mess up. So that's where like a person like me is in demand. So alhamdulillah, being able to do that. And last year, like I was able to finally write a book, and it's doing really well. It's called Cultivating Data Literacy in Kids. And yeah.
Lama.
So I hear a common theme, which is a lot of us in technology really want to bring different parts of ourselves into that work. And that was kind of a driving force for me as well. In high school, I was one of the few women in my AP computer science class. And as the eldest daughter in a family of immigrants, I also took on the role as the technology educator and debugger in my household. So very early on, I was very interested in technology, and especially technology as a tool for understanding and discovering the world. And fast forward, I felt like this was kind of a natural career path for me. It seemed like there would be clear ways to go ahead and get a job, learn about new and interesting things. But I found myself in my first year sitting in my discrete math class saying, there has to be more than this. Like, this isn't really what is driving why I'm interested in technology. A few months later, I took a class that really changed my trajectory. It was called The Politics of Code. And we were understanding that technology manifests biases that impact the usage and the outcomes for people who use that technology. And it's quite a complex phenomenon. We can't just understand it by saying there's something interesting about the data that's going in here, and because of that we can understand how these technologies might impact different people. It was deeper than that, and we needed to do the research to really understand how and why people actually use technologies the way that they do. And that's why I decided to pursue a slightly different path. I ended up studying sociology, but also continued down the path of taking computer science and interactive media courses to really think about the intersection of technology and society. After I finished, I got the chance to spend a year in Indonesia working at a lab called the Pulse Lab Jakarta, where we were working on understanding how data technologies were being applied in the context of Southeast Asia. And it was really interesting because you could see everything from fintech, where women were primarily running small businesses and learning how to use different forms of fintech technology, all the way to large-scale natural disaster response and understanding how to effectively allocate aid, how different technology can impact which aid is allocated. And I started to see the kind of socio-technical contexts in which you really have to think about developing the technology. It's not just about you have an idea and go ahead and go forward with it. This technology is going to be used in many, many contexts, even when it's not obviously political. After my time in Indonesia, I spent about a year and a half at Meta working on the impact of social media on democracy. At that time, it was about to be the 2020 elections in the United States, and so there was a lot of attention on how social media impacted political views, how we can understand polarization on social media communities, and really worked on one of the biggest studies to date on understanding the impact of social media on democracy. A few months later, and this is the interesting part because I know everybody's interested, how did she end up at OpenAI? A few months later, I was kind of looking into different opportunities, and OpenAI 3 years ago now, not many people had heard of it. We're in the news every day now. But 3 years ago, what really drew me to OpenAI was this idea that they wanted to build artificial intelligence that benefited humanity. And I knew that statement had a lot to unpack. And so I was excited to kind of think about what would this mean for me in a place that's just starting out. And my parents were a little confused. Why would you leave a company that we all know, Meta, Facebook, you're well paid. And obviously that risk has paid off, but not just in the sense of this is a successful company. Every day I get to work on issues that really matter to understand how AI impacts society as a whole. So excited to talk
Amazing.
about that.
So following up from that, Lama, so we all know that diversity in teams is super, super important. How can we think about issues of bias? What role can we play as people here that are building products to really avoid that?
So I won't be able to give an answer to this today, but what I will say is I'll tell a story of the launch of DALL-E 2. So this was the first time OpenAI was releasing a generative image model to the world. I was tasked with doing the risk assessment prior to releasing DALL-E for the first time. And of course, one of the first things that I wanted to try was to understand how our communities would be represented by the technology. Typing in different variations of Muslims, Muslim women. You can let your imagination run wild for the effectiveness of those outcomes. But we could really see there were problems emerging that we've historically known about. And even in 2022, 2023, leading into 2024, we still are facing these issues every day and understanding how these technologies might represent us accurately, effectively, and not just on the surface. We want, DALL-E to produce an image that looks like me. It also really matters in the context of facial recognition technologies. It also really matters in the context of resume screening, hiring, and areas where bias actually translate to inequitable outcomes for people. So it isn't just about, I want to see something that looks like me. It's deeper than that. And I'd say that my one advice in terms of working on bias is tie it to the outcome. It isn't just about advocating for seeing yourself. It's the why behind it and understanding how data all the way to outcome can really impact the lives of so many people.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. So turning to kind of ERGs, Alaa, I guess specifically for you, how have you been able to kind of improve and impact employee experience within kind of Muslims at Google?
Who here has heard of ERGs? Just show of hands. Okay. A good chunk of the room. ERGs are basically the clubs that you see on college campuses, but on a professional level and for adults. And ERGs for adults looks very different than it does for supporting developing children and whatnot. But it is a space where you still need to support employees in these companies where they're oftentimes underrepresented. So at Google, one of my main jobs is to help folks internally but also externally. What does that mean? So internally, it's meant various things. Google now has halal options for all employees 3 times a week in terms of protein, and then the other 2 days there will always be a vegetable option. That is a part of our culture. That was a push by Muslims at. Many people don't care about halal, whether it's halal or not, but our community definitely weighs on that. We spend 8 hours or 9 hours in the office every day. You need prayer spaces, so we design prayer spaces. We actually got Google to hire a consultancy to build a prayer space for us that resembles a peaceful space for Muslims to pray in. It also means Ramadan iftars. Thank you.
I'm loving it.
It also means like Ramadan iftars, creating that community that can come together, break fast together after hours, after the cafeterias close off, and building a space where people can come together and pray Tarawih with each other. In Dublin, they actually pray iftar with each other, or pray Tarawih with each other every single night for 30 nights. So that's like the part that we do for internal folks. We also focus on things like 401k. So halal investments are super important to us, and so we worked with our investments team to make sure that the portfolios for your 401k matching are halal. So things like what does it mean to be a full employee but also a full Muslim at the same time are super important to us. It also means representing the more difficult conversations that our community has had to face, like Islamophobia. It has been a very hard 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 months now for many Muslim employees, but also for our intersectional community and our VPs and execs that don't really receive the support that they should to navigate conversations about Islamophobia. So one of our main tasks has been highlighting the experiences that Muslims have at home when they log off of work, but also when they do hop on and work and see the amount of Islamophobia that they do at work, and defining and putting examples to that. Externally, it means supporting events like this. It means sponsorship and raising awareness about communities that are doing important work for Muslims all over the world. It takes up a lot of time, and the influence is vast. Our community is 2 billion strong right now, so there's a lot of opportunity, and that's where we need a lot of the community that's outside of big tech but also inside of big tech to show up in the ways that they want to be supported and really vocalize that need to come together and have an impact and an influence.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So just to follow up from this point, the sponsorship part I think is important, especially when big brands come behind Muslim Tech Fest. So Google, thanks to Alaa, actually, Google sponsored our London one. And that is actually the power, right? Like when I look back on the London one specifically, this one we only had 2 months to turn around, but the London one specifically, having those big brands opened so many doors for us. But you know who opened those brands? The Muslims working within them. And I think that is the power, right? Because we can't do it. We can't literally do it. And, you know, 8 years ago when I started to do this whole Muslim and tech stuff, none of us were in these spaces. So that really shows actually how far that we've come as a community, and we're just only going to go further. So following on from that, Lama, specifically with you, obviously OpenAI, new company, growing very quickly. How has it been cultivating a Muslim community? And like, how have you been doing it? How have you known, okay, who's Muslim, who's coming in? Oh, how can we bring them into the group? What's that been like?
Yeah, so when I first joined OpenAI 3 years ago, I was like, I am probably going to be the only Muslim here. Surprisingly, there was one Muslim woman, and by virtue of being visibly Muslim, she was so excited and reached out to me and said, Assalamu alaikum, and she was extremely excited. I think it was just the two of us at that time, and it stayed that way for quite a while. But since OpenAI has close to 2,000 people now, we've definitely gained some community members along the way. And even without trying, people kind of see me as a representative for the community within the company. And I had to kind of think about that. Like, what does this responsibility really mean, especially in the context of the political climate that has changed over time, everything happening in Gaza? You start to be seen as a representative for multiple issues, not just the technical work around bias and really thinking about like political issues that come to the foray for a particular company. You also start to be seen as somebody who is a leader, and for other Muslims in the company to look up to you and say, how are you conducting yourself? Are you able to speak out? If you are, that gives me the confidence to do that. And we're nowhere near the size of Muslims in Google yet, but inshallah, one day we will be. And I hope to continue to play a role in that and foster the community that is already growing. Hopefully many of you at OpenAI one day too.
Woo! So we also know over the last year or so, it's also been very difficult to navigate being Muslim in the workplace, especially due to things like Palestine, Gaza. Gulrez, just turning my head to that, how has that been, navigating that within kind of your ERG group? And what advice would you give to people navigating that, but also looking to potentially start or grow ERG group?
So it's been challenging, very, very challenging. Like, as a Muslim employee, like seeing everything out there and the leaders coming in and giving statements, right? And you are waiting that, yes, you need that another statement. What happened to that? You are like, this is not your full-time job as an ERG leader, but you talk among yourselves and say, damn, like, what should we do? And that's where, like, if you have the ERGs, like you have got Muslim employees that you are talking to, those kind of things help. The other thing that we do, I'm meeting Alaa for the first time in person, but we have met numerous times offline. So we have this unofficial ERG meetups that go on, and that's where we are sharing things. Like, this is all our volunteer work, and we can leverage each other's resources. So we have been talking about Ramadan, like how to copy your pamphlet and how to do fastathons and whatnot. But then we also talked about how you guys are getting your leaders involved. And those kind of things are very helpful. So, so this is how we would talk about it and learn about it. The other thing is, it's not easy to talk about these issues. But then there are people, there are Muslim voices who are talking about it on LinkedIn, Twitter, social media. Can you support them? Maybe you cannot like or repost their post, but maybe in some other way, invite them as a speaker to your ERGs or other ways that you can support them. I think that's very important. And for all of us, we need to be visible Muslims, not just to buy our dress, but even when I wrote a book, I have a hijabi girl on the cover. And my friends were saying, Muslim friends, why do you want this? This is not a religious book. I said I wanted to represent Muslims. Like, this is a Muslim story. You also talked about data bias. So we have this bias coming in from the internet, right? All those stories about Muslims, they are in negative side, right? So if you provide those kind of stories and create that kind of content, all those things are really, really helpful.
Amazing. So I guess one point that I'd love to get a bit more kind of comments on is, how can we do it, right? How can we continue making impact in tech, small tech, big tech, etc.? And what's been a prime example, I guess, of something you may have seen where you're like, that would not have happened if that person wasn't in that role, if you can obviously comment on it.
I can quickly take on that. So first of all, talking to each other is important. As I said, like Google is at a different level, right? So you've got a maturity curve, if you will. Like you start with halal foods, prayer rooms, and then you talk about other things, right? Now, I joined PayPal 5 years ago, And when I joined over there, I spoke to a few of our Muslim friends that how is it going, and how do I do 401k, for example. And because I don't see any halal options, like all these, there are 10 default options, and none of those are halal. So we talked about it. We said, okay, as part of ERG, can we get this PCRA account where you can get money and then put it on your stocks, halal stocks? They said, no, we are doing it for your own benefit. But I said, like, this is all this diversity and other things. My faith doesn't allow me to do things in this way. So finally, like after a battle of 1 year, we were able to get PCRA accounts. And now people who were working at PayPal like for so many years, they were not using 401k at all. And that was a win for us. So that's one example. I'm sure like others have others examples as well.
Anyone else want to comment on that?
I would just say that it's really important, and I've kind of learned this throughout my career so far. It's very easy, especially if you're visibly or outwardly Muslim in your identity, to kind of be boxed into that. And there's power that comes with that, but you also have to be cautious in the sense that it might be the case that people build trust with you on very contentious issues. I can't be super specific, but through your work, through your relationships with them as people. And what I would say is that that happens not through putting your Muslim identity first necessarily, and this may sound like a controversial statement, but trust is built with you as a human being. And it's beautiful to see that even 1 or 2 Muslims at a company can make a big difference in the considerations that a company makes. And that's probably largely not due to people saying like, hey, I'm Muslim and you need to take these things into consideration. That could work sometimes in some cases. But I also think that just being your whole self through your expertise, because we all are sitting up here, yes, because we're Muslim, but also because we're incredibly successful at the work that we do. And I think just bearing that in mind, like these identities, we carry them with us as tools, and thinking about how you wield them is really, really important. And that's allowed me to make changes in ways that weren't necessarily because I was Muslim, but because I was somebody that this person, this leader, trusted and saw as a human being, and wanted to think about and hear my needs. So, yeah.
Can I add one more thing?
Yeah, go for it.
I think one thing that always stands out to me is excellence in this community, and that's something that I really want to hone in on in my career and as I progress, just because when excellence is done right, it creates beautiful things. So contrary to popular belief, Googlers do more than eat and play. We actually do work on tech, and Google happens to own 2 of the biggest search engines in the world, both YouTube and Google. And so when things like Islamophobia are talked about, it usually stems from the media. That's where the #1 outcome of Islamophobia pops up. I think about 10 years ago, it was flagged that the Ramadan search experience at Google was full of terrorist attack results. So Ramadan was claimed to be the most violent month of the year. It was claimed to be where jihadists shine. And these were actual headlines that popped up when you looked up Ramadan. And doing what the Muslim community does best, we showed up excellently. There was so much noise in the media in the Muslim world about Ramadan search results. And as a global company, what people in the Middle East and what people in North Africa and what people in Southeast Asia and in the southern regions of the world, it really mattered how they claimed and showed up about these different products that they were all supposed to be engaging in. And so when noise was made about Ramadan, our search software engineers, it caught their attention, and they were quickly able to do something about it. So we looked at how we can look at more positive results about Ramadan. We created fun graphics the way that we do about other religious holidays. We added prayer time so that people knew when to break their fasts all around the world. So there were fun things that we were able to do to a search result that was a community effort. It was everyone doing their work really, really well that really tied it. So whatever sphere you're in, no matter what it is, there is an impact that ties back to the Muslim world. Whether that is a part of your core job or not, there is an impact that you can have, whether it be engaging in the conversation or building and executing the product.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. So just to wrap up this panel, I hope this basically shows the real impact that actually Muslims can have within tech companies. I think especially in the UK, we're almost a generation behind, so actually not that many people are in these senior positions. But hopefully for the people that are working in these companies, it can show actually the potential that you can have as you climb the ranks. And the most important thing is staying true to your identity and your values, and this is literally what we can achieve together. So Jazakallah khair to my panelists, and thank you everyone for listening.